We are now live on YouTube.
Dr. Romero, do you have everyone you need?
Yes, sir. Mr. President, I'm ready when you are ready.
Thank you. I believe that I have all the board members as well. John, are we okay to go?
Karen, can you email me the agenda again, please?
Mr. President, we are good to go.
Thank you, sir.
I'd like the agenda as well. I don't think I can find it.
Would you like us to email the agenda to the board members? We can do that real quick. Karen, if you could.
When was it sent?
Mr. President, members of the board, the agenda was sent to you Friday, but I'm happy to resend it to you. Give me just one moment.
It was sent on Friday?
Mm-hmm. Actually, it's probably sent before then, but let me go ahead and send it to you right now.
Board members, if you can let me know when you get your agendas. Also, if we can ensure that we're muted.
Mr. President, members of the board, Mr. Romero, just want to make sure you have it.
Mr. Otero and Mr. Hidon, did you get your agendas?
I don't have the best internet here, so it takes a little while, but we can move on without it, I guess.
I have no problem waiting for it. I want to make sure you guys have it.
I
I just
received,
received it, so you. Mr. Hidon,
Yes, it just came in.
perfect. Thank you. So the time is 5:04 and I'd like to call this meeting to order. The board members are participating via Zoom. I'd like to welcome those who are participating via Zoom and those watching the board meeting via live streaming. The link to the meeting is on the district webpage under Board of Education. The streaming will run through the end of the meeting. If the board is on break, the screen will fade to black and the sound will be muted. In the event there is a disruption in the audio portion, I will pause the meeting until it is reestablished. Mr. Eloy Hidon, can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Smith.
Mr. Stephen Otero, can you hear me?
I can.
Mr. Frank Otero, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Mr. Vickers, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Mr. Smith.
Dr. Romero, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, Mr. President, I can hear you.
Perfect, thank you. Dr. Romero, will you please announce the meeting?
Yes, sir, Mr. President. This meeting has been announced in accordance with the Open Meetings Resolution and is a legally constituted meeting of the Los Lunas School Board of Education.
Thank you, Dr. Romero. Mr. Mark Garcia, are you here?
Yes, sir.
Will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. That will bring us to item number 4, approval of the agenda. Dr. Romero, are there any changes or deletions to the agenda?
No, sir, I don't have any recommendations for changes or deletions to the agenda.
Thank you, Dr. Romero. That being said, I will stand for a motion on the agenda.
Mr. Smith,
Mr. Vickers,
I move that we accept the agenda as presented by the superintendent.
thank you, Mr. Vickers. I have a motion by Mr. Vickers to accept the agenda as presented by Dr. Romero and the staff. I'll stand for a second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Otero. I have a motion by Mr. Vickers and a second by Mr. Frank Otero. Mr. Hidon, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Frank Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Vickers, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
And I vote yes. That will bring us to item number 5. Dr. Romero.
Thank you, Mr. President. Our first item tonight for approval would be the approval of a purchase for Nearpod interactive media learning software for all sites. For this, I actually want to turn it over to Ms. Susan Chavez. She's been really working hard to make this happen for our district, and I want her to share what Nearpod does, and some of the good news we have about it.
Thank you, Dr. Romero. Mr. President, members of the board, Dr. Romero, thank you. We are very excited to bring Nearpod to Los Lunas schools in an official manner. Many of our teachers and students have been able to access Nearpod for the last few months in the remote learning environment. Nearpod is an app. It is web-based. It is a student engagement app with their teachers, so students are able to complete their problems in real time so teachers can understand their problem-solving methods. Our digital learning coaches have become very versed, as well as our professional learning coaches, on how to use Nearpod and support our teachers. We're very excited that Facebook is going to sponsor Nearpod for us, if approved by you all. Facebook has been a great partner with us, and they just gave us exciting news on Friday. And I would like to thank Ms. Mary McGowan. She was instrumental in seeking the support of Facebook. So thank you to Ms. Mary McGowan.
Thank you, Mary. So with that, board, Mr. President, members of the board, we stand for any questions about this action item for the approval of Nearpod.
Board members, any questions?
No questions.
If there are no questions, I'll stand for a motion on item number 5, approval of purchase Nearpod interactive media learning software, all sites out of Operation ALT-11,000.
So moved. I make it a motion.
I have a motion by Mr. Stephen Otero. Stand for a second.
Second.
Was that Mr. Hidon?
Yes.
I have a motion by Mr. Stephen Otero and a second by Mr. Hidon to approve item number 5. Mr. Hidon, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Frank Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Vickers, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, board members. That brings us to item number 6, approval of resolution. Excuse me, we start over. Approval of resolution 21-001, resolution in support of prioritizing public school employees for receipt of vaccines for COVID-19 in preparation for expanded in-person learning. I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Romero, but myself and Dr. Romero had some conversation on this, and this to us is something that desperately needs to be done. We need to make our voice heard here in Los Lunas. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Romero.
Thank you, Mr. President. We've all had many conversations with those in our community. We want to be able to ensure that our environment, our community, our schools, every aspect of this community is going to be safe for both our staff, our students, our parents, our friends, our family. And, a lot of this conversation we have had revolves around the ability to be able to have more vaccines come in to Valencia County. I really do want to thank, many that have worked hard to be able to roll out vaccines for many in our community. That's going to include our local Department of Health, our Office of Emergency Management, Los Lunas Fire, and also, thank Mr. Baca for all the work that he's done to be able to tie all these entities together, to be able to set up these opportunities for us to be able to have these max vaccine opportunities on campuses of Los Lunas schools. What we found, though, over time, though, is now that the state is starting to roll this out over the last few weeks, is that Valencia County still does not have enough to be able to meet the demands that we have, but we see other counties in which they have a much higher rate or percentage across the community. And this really, has been an argument of mine in working with Department of Health, really as an equity issue. Part of that is that we don't have a local hospital to help guide this along, to be able to push this forward. Part of that has to do that we still are a part of a metro area where, it can be argued that not all those vaccines come here, that I would like to argue that we need more for this county. And so what what I'm proposing here tonight is a resolution that you would all support. And this resolution is in support of prioritizing public school employees for the receipt of vaccines for COVID-19 in preparation of expanded in-person learning. Right now, public school employees are labeled as 1B citizens. And that's good. That's a good thing. The 1A really encompassed frontline workers, healthcare professionals, and 1B happens to be a larger population. Many of that right now they're prioritizing citizens that are 75 years and older. And what I'd like to argue is that our school employees need to be at the front of that list also, but also really argue that just Valencia County in general is able to have more vaccines come into this community. So with that, I'd like to be able to read to you this resolution that I would like for us to support, and then I will stand for any questions. And I'm talking a lot tonight, so I better drink some water. So whereas schools across the state of New Mexico are responsible for both providing the best education for students and for responding to the COVID-19 health crisis, and whereas school districts across New Mexico, including the Los Lunas schools, have been conducting instruction in fully remote due to the state's red to green county level restrictions on in-person learning, and whereas our school district employees and serves a larger percentage of the demographics identified as the most susceptible to COVID-19 illnesses and severity, and whereas effective vaccines for COVID-19 are available for adults and are currently distributed in New Mexico, and whereas public school employees are in phase 1B of the vaccine distribution plan, but have been relegated to subsets of phase 1B and are not currently eligible to receive the vaccines without having underlying medical conditions. And whereas New Mexico Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham has announced the end of the red to green county restrictions for public schools and announced the date of February 8th as being the date to which all schools may reopen for in-person learning in the hybrid model, noting that Valencia County remains red, and just recently we are now moving to yellow, so that's good news, and we can revise that according to the state's gating criteria at this time. Now, therefore, it be resolved that the Los Lunas Schools Board of Education is requesting Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham and the New Mexico Department of Health to show clear support for the health and safety of our community by immediately prioritizing the vaccination of public school employees as we prepare to return to in-person learning. That concludes the language for the resolution. Stand for any questions.
Board members, do you have any questions?
I have no questions, but that's an excellent document, and we appreciate you taking the time to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Otero.
Thank you, Mr. Stephen Otero. It was something that we felt we needed to do. Our staff is that important. We need to make our voices heard here in Los Lunas. So I appreciate you, Dr. Romero, filling in the blanks for us and making sure we had this presented today. If there are no comments, I will stand for a motion on item number 6, the approval of the resolution.
Make a motion to approve the resolution provided by and read off by Dr. Romero.
Mr.
Thank you,
Otero,
Mr. Stephen Otero.
I could just, one amendment. I just have that one correction where at the time I wrote this, it was red, but now we are in yellow. So I just, with that one correction, make that clear.
Okay, I make a motion. I'll restate my motion. I make a motion that we approve the resolution provided by Dr. Romero to accommodate any changes that will be needed in the interest of time. Good enough?
Thank you, Mr. Otero.
Thank you, Mr. Stephen Otero. I have a motion by Mr. Stephen Otero to approve the resolution as presented by Dr. Romero. I'll stand for a second.
Mr. Smith, I will second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Vickers. I have a second by Mr. Vickers. Mr. Eloy Hidon, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Frank Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Vickers, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes.
Thank you, everybody.
Item 6 passes 5-0. That brings us to item number 7, approval to untable item, approval of district learning plan that was tabled at the February 2nd, 2021 special meeting. Before we get into it, this is only to untable the item so we can discuss it. This is not so we can move to approve anything until after some discussion was there. As I had stated earlier, this is an ever-changing situation that we're in. And I think out of fairness, I think it would be important for us just to discuss it further. And then we have an item, a couple of numbers down the list here where we can ask some questions and decide whether we wanted to move forward with the hybrid model or not. This is merely to untable the item for discussion. So I would stand for a motion regarding item number 7.
Mr. President,
Mr. Stephen Otero.
just a matter of clarification. We never tabled anything on the February 2nd meeting. So I think for us to try to act on something that wasn't done on February 2nd would be in violation of the Open Meetings Act. The action item that we took, if I can clarify it, was that we remain in remote learning to until March the 23rd, with the exception of CEL. I don't know if I'm wording it word for word, and it was voted on and it was passed by a vote of 4-1, with the only one against it was Mr. Vickers. So I'm thinking that if we move forward with this, that we just very much might be in violation of the Open Meetings Act because we never tabled anything.
Which is why we have Ms. Stalen here. Jackie, were you familiar with the minutes that we had from that meeting?
Yes, I am. It appeared to me that, and again, not having been there, but it appears to me that the way it was recorded is that it was tabled. But the easy way to rectify that is simply to say that someone moves to untable it, or if it wasn't tabled, someone moves to open the discussion back up. And it doesn't really matter whether it was tabled or not tabled. And again, the simplest way is for someone to move to open it back up for discussion. And whether you tabled or did not table doesn't really make that much difference.
Thank you, Ms. Stalen.
Mr. President, again, it was posted that we would untable it. The posting would have to read that we would, I spoke to the AG's office and it would have to be re-advertised. And at this point, I would just clarify that I believe that we would be in violation of the Open Meetings Act if we move forward with this. I went back and I studied the YouTube meeting, and it was very clear that there was never mentioned. It might be in the minutes. I haven't seen the minutes, but if we go back to the video, and I'm willing to wait to go back to that video, it'll clearly show that we voted 4-1. So the AG's office, in speaking to the AG's office, I was just trying to get clarification, stated that it would have to be re-advertised, reposted, and another meeting would have to be had. That's just my information. However you want to move forward, that's up to you. I don't think that our action items would be valid if in fact we went into action item. How does that negate the action that was taken that we stay in remote till March the 23rd? I don't see it. I don't see it happening.
Mr. President, Mr. Otero, if I may, again, it appears to me, from what I have seen, that there was, at least the understanding was that the motion had been to table it. Now you can, and I'm not disagreeing with you, Mr. Otero, I understand it from what you've said, but what I'm saying is that one way to rectify that at this point in time is that the board can move to correct the minutes from the last meeting, that the matter was not tabled. It can then move to review the matter that was postponed until now. And I think your notice of your meeting will be sufficient to cover that. Because what you're actually doing is dealing with the confusion with regards to the tabling, which I understand, Mr. Otero, is your concern. about whether it was tabled or not tabled, and what did we advertise and what didn't we advertise. So you take action on that matter, and then you move to review the issue that was set aside at the last meeting, and then you can move forward from that. And all you're going to do is do discussion. If you decide to take action, I think again, your notice is sufficient to cover that.
Yeah, I spoke specifically to Patricia Salazar, and she very much stated, you're right that we can untable it, but it have to be an advertised, posted item on the next posting. She did say that it had to be, if it not untabled, but if it was going to be negate the vote, that it had to be brought up by one of the four that voted to stay in remote until the 23rd.
And I don't.
And the YouTube is specific on that. So I understand. I'm not going to sit here. I'm not an attorney. You're an attorney. I did talk to the AG's office, who she's in charge of open government, and you probably know her. And that was her specific. So if we move forward to this, I would suggest that it be for the record that that I believe it's not in compliance with the Open Meeting Act.
And I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Otero, Mr. President, members of the board. And I want to break it out into segments because I think you've said a couple of different things, Mr. Otero, and I want to address each of those appropriately for you. Again, the YouTube, let me say for you, is not the official record of the meeting. It is a something out there for the public. The actual minutes of the meeting are the minutes that are the official record of your meeting, and the recording that you have if the board has decided that's how it's going to maintain the record. So that's one thing. And so if the decision of the board is to take this matter off of the table, whether it was tabled or not, and I understand, but if the decision is to act on this matter now, I think that's probably the proper language to use, to act on this matter now for discussion purposes, then I think there needs to be a motion to do that, and the board may then have that discussion. If the question is to move off of the postponement until after the holiday, and you are correct in that one of the four people who voted in favor of that has to move to change that time frame for discussion purposes. So there has to be actually 3 steps involved in order for it to properly be before the board today. And I apologize to you all if that's confusing, but I want to make sure that that everybody feels as if comfortable with the notion that we have addressed this matter as we need to address it. And the first thing is for there to be someone to move this matter for discussion now. Then there needs to be a motion that from someone who voted to basically postpone discussion of this matter out to, again, I believe it was after your spring break. And it has to be one of the 4 people who agreed to do that. And I think those things there will get you back in the place you need to be. And then you can have a decision if you decide today, you want to decide this matter today. I think those 3 steps will get you in compliance.
So just for the record, again, yeah, I said YouTube because that's what's on the, so I guess if we have a recording of the meeting, then I would like to reference the recording, the official recording of the meeting. We do not have minutes before us, so we can't reference the minutes. And I would suggest that we review that recording to verify if it was a tabled item or if it was voted on.
Ms. Wolf, do you have, I'm going to try to make this easier for all the discussion that we're having. Ms. Wolf, do you have the minutes from that meeting as to what was particularly stated? And also, so we can move along, since there's 3 steps, I'll get rid of one of them, and I'm going to make a motion to untable the item, the district learning plan that we tabled on the February 2nd meeting of 2021. So I can get rid of one of those things, but Ms. Wolf, do you have the minutes from the meeting of February 2nd?
Mr. Smith, members of the board, Dr. Romero, we have a draft of the minutes. I think I can help you with the confusion that you're talking about. Mr. Stephen Otero had asked that it would be postponed. He asked you if that was correct. You said that you would prefer the word untabled to table it. And he gave you leeway, I believe, when he said it was 6 one way, half a dozen eggs another way, that you could state it how you chose to. And I believe in doing so, when I did my minutes, I took that piece as tabled, and then I put tabled postponed as a slash, because that's what the statement was. But I do believe that it was when he said postponed it, and then you said you wanted it tabled. That's how my minutes reflect it.
So Mrs. Wolf, was there any other dialogue after that?
I can go back and reopen it up again, but you guys, they continued going back and forth. There's a lot of dialogue in between that. But the bottom line was, when it came back, it was to postpone it until after spring break. But Mr. Otero had already given him leeway by saying, again, 6 one way, half a dozen eggs the other, that he could call it what he wanted to. And that's when Mr. Smith said he would prefer the word tabled.
So what
So
was
if
the
I
final
Flash
dialogue?
on mine.
If I can chime in on this one, going through the video, official and not official. Brian Smith stated, so I have a motion by Mr. Stephen Otero to remain in remote learning until the 23rd of March, with the exception of CEL that is going on right now. So yes, you're right, Ms. Wolf, that it was going back and forth, but we actually voted on a motion that was read. So here again, whatever has to be done, let's do it. But we need to comply and make sure, and I'm going only by the advice that was given to me by the Attorney General's office, clarifying that it had to be reposted. So if that's the case, I just don't want to waste our time right now. And then we get dinged with not being in compliance. So let's move forward. Whatever it takes, just so we can make sure that we're following the Open Meetings Act.
So Ms. Thalen, I will refer to you as well.
Again, I believe the appropriate steps are as I've outlined them for you. And I understand Mr. Otero's concern. I think if the Attorney General says something, all you have to do is go to your next meeting and affirm your actions taken during this meeting. I don't see these as for the process to move forward, I don't see them as stumbling blocks to you. So I believe your next step would be for someone to move to address those things that were tabled, since that's how your minutes are likely to read last time that the board met.
So I've already stated that I would make a motion to untable the item of the approval of the district learning plan that we tabled at the February 2nd, 2021 meeting. Now, if we didn't use the word tabled, and the only reason I'm doing this is out of fairness, I think it's important for us to discuss this as it's ever changing. In my opinion, March 23rd or whenever that next meeting, it's too far down the road. This is ever changing. And I think we need to discuss it as often as we possibly can. So whatever the verbiage is, whether it be tabled or whether it be or any other verbiage, I'm asking Ms. Thalen, what motion do I need to make so we can put it up to a vote? I'm not asking to overturn anything. I just want to discuss this.
Yeah, I think your motion was sufficient, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I just got a question again. Karen says she can go back and look at it. Can we kind of just recess just to get a clarification exactly what the motion read and how the votes were taken? And can we just take a little break while she gets that confirmation?
So Ms. Stalen, if Ms. Wolf was to provide to you the exact conversation that took place when in regards to the motion to set this item aside at the February 2nd meeting, would you be able to give us some advice after that?
Yes, I would, sir.
Okay, Ms. Wolf,
Yes, sir.
if I gave you about 10 minutes, could you come up with this?
Yes, sir. How
Okay.
how further back do you want me to go? The reason, this is my reasoning when I'm giving you this. So you had a prior discussion. Mr. Smith, excuse me, Mr. Stephen Otero said that he wanted to put it back to go. Then he said, is that the way you wanted it written? Their conversation continued. You said you would prefer it to be tabled. He said, however you want, again, the 6-1 way, blah, blah, blah. And you said you would prefer the word tabled. So when I did the minutes is what you will be asked to approve at the next board meeting. It says to postpone / in parentheses tabled. And that's how the motion was written. And I wrote that because, as you know, it's motion second, and then the rest of it is subjective. So when I wrote that will go into your official meeting minutes to be approved. I incorporated both of those because he gave you leeway, I believe, when he said it is up to you.
I
Want the
want to
motion,
clarify
or do
something.
you not want the motion?
I want to clarify something. We should go to the point where there was an actual vote taken. What was voted on? And there was 4 votes to 1. And if it says to table it, then let's move forward. If it said to remain in hybrid, that's what we want to hear. We want to hear what was voted on what motion was made.
So Ms. Wolf, can you read the motion and the second?
One moment. Bear with me because you had like 4 different versions of this before we finally got the final one. So bear with me.
Mr. President, can we take a 5-minute break and not put so much pressure on Mrs. Wolf? I know she doesn't have her minutes, but can she go and review the final dialogue that we had with the final motion that you read out to us?
Sure. Ms. Wolf, let us give you 10 minutes. Let's take a 10-minute recess. We'll pause the meeting now for a period of 10 minutes. So it is 5:36. Let's be back here at 5:46.
Please mute all of your microphones. I have no way to pause YouTube.
Hey, John, it's 5:47. I think we're ready to come back. Thank you, John. Mr. Eloy Hidon, can you hear me?
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Otero, can you hear me?
I sure can.
Mr. Frank Otero, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. Mr. Vickers, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Dr. Romero, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, Mr. President.
Very good. Thank you, everybody, for staying with us, all of you that are watching via YouTube and all of you that are participating. So, Ms. Wolf,
Yes, sir.
before I ask you my question, Ms. Stalen, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can.
Okay, thank you. So, Ms. Wolf, can you give us the verbiage on the draft minutes?
Yes, sir. And again, it's based off the conversations that you all had. You had three or four different versions of this. This is what I put on the minutes for the motion. Mr. Esotero moved and Mr. Huron seconded to postpone, in parentheses, table item number 5, discussion and action as needed regarding district learning plan and to remain in remote learning, making sure staff had received vaccination prior to coming back to hybrid learning until after spring break, March 23rd, with the exception of CEL classes. Then Mr. Vickers had his comments and he voted no. There being no additional discussion, unless you wanted to read Mr. Vickers' comments as well.
No,
There being no discussion, Mr. Smith called for a vote. The following results: P. David Vickers, no. Frank Otero, on behalf of students and parents, said yes. Stephen R. Otero, yes. Eloy Hiron, yes. Brian C. Smith, yes. Motion to table the district learning plan passed 4-1. And I took the leeway to put tabled. So that is what I put in the official minutes.
Thank you, Karen. So, Ms. Stalen, sorry,
That's fine.
bet you wish you never opened that email, eh?
No, sir. I'm happy to help you out if I can. The
Yeah.
motion will be to untable the matter that was tabled at the prior board meeting.
That being required to be made by somebody who voted to table it.
That's correct.
So I still have my motion out there to untable the item approval of district learning plan that was tabled at February 2nd, 2021 special meeting. And out of fairness, I thought we could untable this just so we can talk about it. I'm not asking anybody to change anything other than to bring it up for discussion since there's new information coming in every day. That being said, I will stand for a second on item number 7, approval to untable the item approval of the district learning plan.
I'll second that.
I have a second by Mr. Frank Otero. Mr. Hidon, how do you vote?
Sir, can we have discussion on this item?
Sure.
Mr. President, I think at the 2:24 mark of that video, and I think you were the one that repeated it and detailed it. So that was the final motion that we made because we had gone back and forth with it. And Karen Wolf is right. We had 4 different options on it, but at that point, at that part of the meeting, we had the final motion. So I disagree with that. That's what the motion was. But we have a motion right now to untable this in a second. But the reason why we asked to go to that date was, in fairness to our teachers, I was not ready to bring bring our teachers back without the vaccine. And what appears right now is a lot more teachers are being asked to come back, and we have not asked them to come back. We are still in the remote setting. I don't know if they're being forced. I don't know how that's happening. The other thing, the reason why we went out to March 23rd was because we were wanting to make sure that we gave ample time for these teachers to plan their daycare and things like that. I don't understand this. It was clear the motion that was made that day. So, but I guess we interpret it different ways. So that's where I stand with this.
So I have a motion and a second. Mr. Hidon, how do you vote?
No.
Mr. Stephen Otero, how do you vote?
Discussion,
Mr. Stephen Otero?
discussion, please. So this is totally, it's quite unusual when the motion specifically stated to remain in remote until the 23rd, with the exception of CEL. I'm totally against this. It's open up for discussion, as you're saying. That's fine. We are creating anxiety for teachers that today's meeting brought up, and you were the one that's even voted to stay. You yourself, Mr. Smith, voted to remain in remote. That was one of your votes. And now we come back a few days after the first meeting of the second, and with the expectation of the teachers thinking, well, we're going to go back, or what's going on? We just can't make up our mind. The thing is that the vote was placed 4-1 to remain in remote, and I still disagree with untabling something that was never tabled. And I just noticed that this is not right, and it's something to the effect of, if you don't like the decision you made when you made the decision, then all of a sudden you want to change it. It's odd. It's very odd that we're doing this, and I think we're putting our staff and our teachers through some anxiety or some not being comfortable, when in fact, in their minds, we are going to stay remote based on the vote until the 23rd. It's to me, it's totally off base, and I still think we need to stay remote as it was voted until the 23rd. And if you want to call another meeting to take this off and void the vote and do your motions, then I'm open to that as well. But I believe that we're in violation of the Open Meeting Act because it wasn't posted this way. And so my vote is no.
Thank you, Mr. Otero. Your objection is noted. Based on legal advice and the minutes that we have read. And when we get into the discussion, I will in fact tell you why I voted the way I did. And I voted out of fairness to the board because obviously we had a lot of questions and I wanted to make sure that we had everybody's answers. So that being said, Mr. Frank Otero, how do you vote?
Mr. President, I vote yes, and I have an explanation after the vote is done.
Yes, sir.
As soon as you're done completing the votes, I'll give my explanation.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Otero. Mr. Vickers, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
And I vote yes. Approval to untable item number 7, approval of the district learning plan is now untabled, which will bring us to item number 8. And I will start with Mr. Frank Otero.
All right, Mr. President, members of the board, the reason why I seconded and voted was just to get the discussion. It's not obligating me to, in any manner. I mean, for the record, I voted, whether we want to call it table or whatever, I was one of the, I voted the way I voted, and I voted my conscience, and that's just the way it is. Right now, I believe that before we do get into the discussion, I just want to make a quick comment that I think we have a conflict of opinions, and I just want to make that noted for the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Frank Otero. And it is customary when somebody requests something on the agenda or discussion, we start with them. And since I requested the work session and I requested this meeting, I'm going to have a discussion, my discussion points first. First of all, I wanted to point out what I felt the board voted on during its last scheduled meeting, but now I will rephrase that and say what I voted for at that first meeting. We voted to table this issue until our meeting on March 23rd. We did not vote to abandon the reentry plan. We did not vote. I did not vote. Sorry, let me rephrase both of those. Number two, I did not vote to abandon the reentry plan, and I did not vote to keep the kids home. And I certainly did not vote to cancel athletics. The information that was relayed to the newspaper was incorrect. And I have spoken to Dr. Romero, and he assures me that information that is decided at a board meeting will be relayed through the superintendent or the Board of Education to keep the information accurate, unbiased, and in tune with the spirit of what I feel the board has decided. So thank you, Dr. Romero, for making sure that that happens. Second of all, and I told you the reason I asked for this work session and the meeting is because this situation is ever changing. And I think we need to discuss this as often as necessary. We need to keep informed of our readiness to get into a hybrid schedule. Now, I'm not saying that it happens today. I'm not saying that it happens tomorrow. I think we need to be informed of where we're at on every single stage, because I see in the future Los Lunas schools being in a hybrid model. What I don't see is us waiting until the beginning of a school year where we jump in with both feet and we have nothing to base how we want to approach this. We have an opportunity, I feel, to enter into a model that will, and I don't like to use the word pilot program, but for lack of a better phrase right now, that's the one that I'm going to use. I think we can use this time with a smaller cohorts of students being at one facility and 2 facilities and 3 facilities at the high school level and learn how we're going to do it when we move further and further down the line. Yes, I do anticipate having meetings before we open up any other portion of a hybrid model if we decide to open up the hybrid model. It was very important to adopt the resolution today regarding the vaccinations. We need our staff vaccinated. I'm not asking us to jump ahead of any demographic that the powers that be deem to be more critical to vaccinate. I'm just asking that you get us enough vaccine in this state to take care of our staff, because it is that important, and I know how they feel about that. One of the discussion points I want to bring up is we've asked our kids to do so much up until this point. I mean, they've given up proms, they've given up graduation, they've given up band drama, they've given up recess, they've even given up lunch with their best friends in the cafeteria. We have asked them to give all of this stuff up, and it seems that the powers to be just want to make it harder for us to get through this. And speaking for myself, I'm not asking them to make the decisions for me. I'm asking them to help me make the decisions easier. And it's obvious, they just wish us to get into a hybrid model as fast as we can. So they threw it in our lap and they dangled the biggest carrot they could find. How can we get this school district into a hybrid model? I know, let's use athletics. You guys want to participate in athletics? Do it, and do it now. That's how you get it. That was thrown into our lap and it's left up for us to decide in a very, very short period of time. They could help us a great deal here. And we discussed this earlier. In fact, one of you brought it up. Let's base the qualifications for participation in extracurricular activities on what our students are doing, attending class, their grade point averages, and every other caveat it takes to be eligible for participation. And let's not base that qualification on the location in which they accomplished it. If our students are learning, they're getting the GPA, they're attending class, then they should be eligible. But you didn't even try to work with us on that. You just threw it back in our lap. And that's what I'm saying. It's very, very difficult to make these decisions with all of these factors thrown at us. Every district is going through this and has gone through this, and they're getting the emails that we're getting. And one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this was, although I hope they're not getting some of the emails that we're getting, that wouldn't be appropriate to wish on anybody. However, the reason I wanted to discuss this more often is because of the huge amount of emails that we have gotten and the correspondence, and I know you guys have gotten them too, because you're on the address list. So this whole situation and what it is we're deciding to do is creating insomnia for each and every one of us. I know it is, because the kids and the staff are that important. We need to move forward, and we will move forward. And we need everybody's help. I've already discussed what the parents' role would be in this. The parents have got to reinforce the need to follow all these rules once the kids are going to school. And for the younger kids, they're going to be wearing masks for a great period of time on the days that they're in school. So maybe they start wearing it around the house just so they could get used to it. I think we definitely need the parents' assistance in that. I've already stated that I think we need the staff's assistance in that. If you see people not social distancing, say something. If you see people not wearing a mask or routinely taking it off, say something. There's consequences for that. Dr. Romero explained them. If you don't want to wear your mask, there is a place for you to learn, and that would be at home. If you want to follow the rules and you want to social distance and you're willing to come back to school, then there's a place for you to learn. You know, I've had conversations with people on every set of all sides of this issue right here. I've had great conversations with teachers who are comfortable coming back to work and who are comfortable with children returning to school. And one of them was from the middle school, and I respect him very much. I respect his opinion. And he told me, look, I would have liked to have seen the kids back, but I understand that the board erred on the side of safety. And I think we should err on the side of safety. I've talked to teachers who are 100% comfortable with returning to school once they've been vaccinated. And they wish to continue the amazing job they're doing remotely, because they are doing an amazing job. And we're getting better and better and better at our remote learning. So I want to make sure that they feel comfortable when they come back to school. And if they're waiting for a vaccine, then they're waiting for a vaccine. I've talked to students who are more than comfortable with coming back to school, and we're going to have to hold them accountable that they follow the rules. And I've also talked to students who are more comfortable with the remote learning environment for whatever reason, and I respect that as well. But one of the driving forces is some of the conversations that we have with parents. And I don't want to call the young lady out, but she called me and we talked for 45 minutes on the phone. And she said, look, I understand why you voted the way that you voted. And I explained to her, you know, this is a big deal. This is a big deal in our district, and something we should be getting all the information we possibly can in order to make sure that we're doing the best possible job for our children. And she told me, Mr. Smith, I need your help. My children are learning remotely, and I can't help them with the questions that they have. I would like to have the opportunity to send my child to class. I am comfortable with it, and I think they need it. They are following very, very far behind. And she made me realize that this is all about choice, in my opinion. It's about teachers that choose to come back. It's about students that choose to come back. It's about a district that chooses to move forward. This proposal and the presentation that we saw today was stellar. I mean, it's obvious that the staff and Dr. Romero have worked very, very hard on this. And I think they have done a really good job based on the questions I've heard every time we've discussed this to provide answers for that. Have they provided all of the board's answers? Apparently there's some more questions we need answered, and they're going to do that as well. But it is impossible, in my opinion, to cover every single scenario when it comes to bringing our kids back or to keeping our kids remote. We just cannot cover them. We have people all over this issue, and it is my desire as a board member to help them all. I want to support a reentry model that addresses everyone's concerns. And it seems difficult, but it's really not that difficult. I want the teachers to come back based on their choice, not because they were antagonized or ridiculed for their decisions. And I stress that to Dr. Romero. In fact, Dr. Romero told me that he will be the person you contact if you feel like you're in that boat. You can reach out to Dr. Romero specifically. I won't support anything that even resembles trying to force our staff to come back to work. And I want the students to come back based on their and their parents' choice. In my opinion, parents know a great deal about what's best for their kids. And if they're comfortable sending their kid back and knowing that that's the best environment for their child to learn in, and we have the wherewithal and the protocols and the safety measures in place to make that happen, I think that we should make that happen. I think we should give them that opportunity as well. I want us to continue our remote efforts, as I've said, and we're doing great, and continually look for ways to increase our hybrid footprint with people that feel comfortable and students that feel comfortable. And it's going to be a great deal of work when you get a group of students and a group of teachers and you're trying to make a classroom. I get that, but we're going to have to start, and we're going to have to start very, very soon. I just have a couple more comments and then I'll probably be done. All of this, though, will be contingent on our efforts to enforce the requirements. It's huge. I've said it like 3 times. It's huge that we enforce the requirements, we mitigate our risk, and we understand that we are a school community as one. We have to try to act as a unit to do what's best for the people in our district. I will only support a hybrid reentry model based on choice, not based on volunteering. I don't ever want to call it volunteering. Volunteering is what you do when your friend says, hey, do you think this will make a good parachute? You volunteer to go prove him right or wrong. Choice is what the word here is that's best describes on how I would support a reentry program. If the teachers are comfortable coming back and they choose to, I will support them. If they choose to do it remotely, I will support that. Same with the students, same with the parents. It's all about choice. I will support nothing else. I've ran out of paper, so I believe that's everything I had to say. I will open it up for further discussion.
Mr. President?
Mr. Hidon.
Okay, I think at the February, I'm not here to argue the motions and the table, the language on that. The motion I think we did make was to go to March 23rd or something like that, the first day of after spring break, that we would revisit this then. We would stay in the remote setting till then. So this has been untabled. I believe there was a motion made, but now we're untabling it. So with all these moving pieces, what model are we in right now?
I don't understand your question. So just to clarify for everybody,
My question is, what model are we in right now? Because we said we were going to not table this. We made a motion to revisit this the first day after spring break, and we would stay in the remote model. We were not going to require our teachers to come back. That's what I believe the motion was made, but somewhere it said it got tabled. So if that's undone, where are we at? I mean, are we in the remote setting right now? Or that's the piece that I'm not understanding.
So I don't know that I can classify what.
Maybe that's a question.
Setting we're in. I get that. So item number 7 was when we decided to untable this. So we had that discussion. We're on item number 8, just discussing this item in general. So if I don't know, is there a nomenclature that describes what state we're in? And you wanted this from Ms. Stalin?
I just want to know what state we're in right now. Are we in the remote setting or the hybrid?
As I understand it, you have not voted to change your current setting, which is in a remote setting. I think you simply have agreed to discuss that matter. And so if there would have to be a motion to move into a different type of setting for your students and your staff.
Ms. Council, I got to watch the video again, and I'm not here to fight over that, okay? The motion was made to come back on the Monday after spring break. So now it got turned into a table item, so we're untabling it. So we're undoing something that we did February the 2nd. So my question is right now, because the direction that night was to stay in the remote setting until that Monday. So my question is, what setting are we in right now?
Your setting is the one that the excuse me, the setting that you're in is the one that the board last approved. And the last approved setting, as I understand it, sir, was that you are in remote. What you did was decide, yes, the original motion was to postpone any decision-making until after your spring break and to stay in remote until that time. As I understood the minutes that were read, that motion was amended to basically say, we're going to table that decision until after, we're going to table that decision. So there was no decision made, as I understand from the motion, that to remain in the remote setting until spring break. You're now discussing what you want to do at this point in time, but you never voted to change your setting.
Correct. And as I understand it, we voted, as I understand it, to remain in the remote educational process that we were doing until March 23rd, and it was a tabled item. And I also know that according to the OMA guidelines, a tabled item can be untabled anytime at a board meeting. So is that correct, Ms. Stalen?
That's correct, sir.
Okay, so that was item number 7. We're now on item number 8, and we're just discussing that. So I guess to answer the question, we are exactly where we were when we voted on the second. We haven't changed our state. We haven't reapproved anything different than what we were doing yesterday. Is that correct, Dr. Romero?
That is correct, Mr. President. We are currently in a remote virtual setting.
Thank you.
Mr. Smith,
Mr. Vickers.
can I get some clarification? Okay, so we've untabled the item. Item 8 on the agenda is discussion of it. Item 9 on the agenda is action. But that would be, the action would be on the modified plan that was just presented by Dr. Romero, correct? So it wouldn't be the exact same item that was tabled on the 2nd of February.
Correct, because the remote learning plan is different than it was on there, but it's still titled the remote learning plan, even though there's different stuff in it. So that would be my understanding of item number 9, is to, when it references the district learning plan, that's as it is currently, not as it was on the 2nd.
Mr. President, members of the board, if this may help, there's basically 3 versions of how PED would allow us to be able to provide. It's basically 1, a virtual remote setting, 2, a hybrid setting, and 3 would be back to full in-person learning. Right now, we have the ability or the opportunity to move forward and either stay in a virtual remote setting, or move into a hybrid setting. But let me be a little bit more specific about the virtual remote setting. Is that would allow for 100% of our students to be in remote, but it does also allow for small group instruction and to be able to increase that small group instruction. And that's what we're doing starting with our CEL classrooms and starting to scale that up to some of our other SPED classrooms. So there is a little bit of a caveat to that remote virtual setting, in that it does allow for small group in-person learning.
Thank you, Dr. Romero. Something was blocking my unmute button. Mr. Hidon, I don't know if that's answering your question.
I think the council did answer it. I'm okay with it.
Thank you. Is there any more discussion for item number 8?
You know there's going to be some, Stephen, so here he is.
Mr. Stephen Otero?
Yes. This might be setting a precedence for future meetings. I mean, you, Mr. Smith, voted to remain in remote, and then now a couple of weeks you're changing it. So I guess anything that we are going to bring up in future board meetings that we don't like, we can come back and try to change it. So I think this is what's happening. It's leading us that way. I totally disagree, and I've said this several times, that our minutes should not be done on an interpretation. Our minutes should be done on facts. So I think that once the AG's office goes through this whole thing, they will find out that it was a fact, and the fact remains that a motion was made. You repeated it through your mouth. A motion was made to remain in remote learning until the 23rd, with the exception of CEL. So with that said, I'm going to continue with discussion. So Dr. Ramirez says we have three different ways. So we have teachers that are being asked to come back, and I spoke to Ms. Romero, Dr. Romero earlier about this, but just for the public record, to come back, that they would be coming back on the 22nd of February. Teachers are also saying that they're asked that if they do not want or feel that they cannot come back to hybrid or face-to-face teaching, that they need to go directly to Brian Baca's office and get the medical documents to verify that they don't want to come back. How can you address that, Dr. Romero?
As we spoke earlier, Mr. Otero, is that if a teacher is requesting to stay home, that there is a process for that's been dictated to us from Department of Health and CDC about providing documentation because of an underlying health condition. So in that example, I think what you're talking about is that if a teacher is requesting to continue to stay working remotely in any of those settings, there's a process for that. It's not a Las Lunas process. That is a process set forth to us by PED, DOH, and CDC.
That's if we vote to go hybrid. Is that correct?
That is if a teacher is requesting to officially be able to stay in a remote setting. Right now, what we're doing is we are in a remote setting, and then as we move forward, I want to be able to abide by the wishes of teachers as much as possible. Absolutely.
No, so what I'm saying is that, so let's just say hypothetically that we go through a vote on this thing, and let's say just, oh yeah, let's vote to go hybrid. Then that's going to be the process that's going to be taken. But if we stay on remote learning, as we voted to do on until the 23rd, teachers don't have to go marching into Brian Baca's office and get those medical documents. Am I correct in that? If we're staying remote, it's a board decision to stay remote. They're not going to be asked to go get those documents, right?
There won't be a need for that. No.
Right. So the follow-up question on that same motion that was passed 4-1, you had corrected us and asked, or you intervened and said, can we stay on CEL? What's the exact definition of CEL?
Susan, can you tell me what the acronym for CEL is?
Dr. Romero, members of the board, Mr. President, Mr. Otero, CEL is Community Enhanced Learning Programs. So those are for our students with severe to moderate disabilities.
So when thank you for that clarification. So Dr. Romero, when you asked the board, when we were doing our motion and our vote to restate it, you said except for CEL. So we took that vote to be CEL. So how many students do we have participating on CEL right now?
Currently, we have 4 schools that do have our CEL programs at the elementary level. We have 17 students that are participating.
District-wide?
At the elementary level. 52 students are in those programs, 17 students are attending.
Okay. So in speaking with you, Dr. Romero, earlier, I had asked you that why are special ed teachers being asked to come and get their paperwork from Brian Baca's office, and you said because it's all of special ed. But exactly what you had asked us to do is to remain with the CEL. So we voted on that. So CEL is just that community. So it's affecting 17 students. So therefore, if we had teachers that are volunteering, and I guess we do, is that right? If you don't mind me asking, Ms. Chavez, do we have teachers that are teaching the CEL classes right now?
Yes, we currently do.
Good, but I want our special ed, special needs kids to come and get some one-on-one, because I know it's very important. But here again, I think it should be on a volunteer basis. But if it's on a volunteer basis, I don't think we should mandate that those that don't come in, that they have to get the medical documentation. I also think it's unfair to mandate to any teacher to get medical documentation unless it's mandated to all teachers, not just special ed. So, you know, this is all very confusing, and it's all, it's not playing out right, because I'm concerned that let's say some action is taken tonight, and then we in fact find out that we're against, that we violated the Open Meetings Act because it wasn't properly posted. What becomes of our actions? And I'm asking this to either the attorney or to Mr. President, who changed his mind within a week and a half's time, or to Dr. Romero.
So
what becomes of our, if we found that we're in violation of the Open Meetings Act, what becomes of our actions that are taken tonight, regardless if it's coming back to school or not coming back to school?
So I can address that with the exception of the final piece of that. I keep saying that I changed my mind, and I've said this a bunch of times, that we need to make sure that we are voicing our opinion and not interpreting other people's opinions. And I stated earlier when I spoke that I voted to table this issue for information because the board had a lot of questions, plain and simple. I didn't vote necessarily to remain in remote until March 23rd. Even if I had, the item was tabled and I can open it up whenever I want. And the reason I wanted it open was based on the sheer volume of correspondence that we have gotten from our community and from our teachers. I don't feel like I should leave those out there without addressing them and showing them that I have read them and I share their concerns and I'm willing to bring it forward. As I've stated earlier, I'm not willing to vote for a hybrid model. I'm willing to vote for choice. If we have students that choose to come back, we should let them. If we have the teachers that choose to come back, to educate them. That is it. I'm not for voting for forcing teachers to come back at all. I'm not for voting to force students to come back at all. I don't have a magic number of students I want to see in the classroom for anything other than the fact that it is the best environment for some of them, period. That's my take on it. That's actually how I feel. So that I don't need an interpretation of how I feel. That is exactly how I feel. So as far as the second part of your question, I'll have to leave that to somebody who's smarter about that than I am.
So great comments right there. I do appreciate that, Mr. Smith. Thank you. I too would like to see if there's some volunteer that want to come back, and volunteer teachers that want to come back. I too would like to see that. But I feel that there's going to be some peer pressure, intimidation by other teachers. Wow, this guy, you know, to me, it creates a big, I think it'll create some peer pressure amongst our staff members. You know, I mean, at the high school, there was quite a bit of peer pressure going on during that protest they had or whatever they had. And it's very intimidating to some of these teachers. And we shouldn't have to put our teachers through this intimidation. You know, I would like to see some teachers, if they want to volunteer, yeah, I'm all for it, but let's not make it a board decision. That should be a in-house decision. Let the administration work it out. But hopefully there's no peer pressure, intimidation by other teachers that feel, well, if they're going back, I'm going to go back, you know, and that's going to happen. And I hate to see that as well. So, you know, we're going to have, if we choose to stay on remote, which we already did till the 23rd, but whatever date it is, then I think our teachers need to know if it's black or if it's white. Are we going to stay or we're not going to stay? Stop going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And this is what it created on this meeting today. We're going back and forth. The teachers had it in their mind, okay, they're going to revisit it on the 23rd. You didn't interpret it that way, and you're the one that voiced the motion word for word, and we voted on what you voiced the motion. So with that said, no, I am not for teachers coming back either, and I don't think we should even go on a hybrid. I would like to see about us visiting on the volunteer if there are some teachers that want to do that. But as we stated, or I stated on the last meeting, a big factor in my decision was the virus shot. Here again, I stated this in the work session earlier. The virus shot is now being told by us that the CDC says, yes, they can come back without the virus. It's not a big deal. But the CDC also said, wear a mask. Then they come back and say double mask. CDC came out and they said, we will, and I'm repeating myself in the work session for those that weren't in the work session. The CDC says the other viruses that are coming in aren't as deadly, but now, just yesterday's news, they said they're more deadly. So, as I said earlier, it's kind of like we don't know where we're at right now. So we shouldn't have to put our teachers in a position that they have to make a choice as based on peer pressure or any other pressure. This is wrong. This meeting that we brought up now, this untabling thing is wrong. And yeah, I still want to get that question answered. What becomes of our actions, our decisions based on this? If the Attorney General finds that we're violating the Open Meetings Act, what becomes of it?
Joe Otero, and apparently I did a bad job of explaining how I felt. I thought I made it perfectly clear that I would not support anybody forcing a teacher to come back into the classroom. In fact, I would hope that us as a school community would respect each other's wishes. I also stated that I am all about the teachers willing to make that choice to come back into the classroom, period. I don't want to go into a hybrid model that is going to require students and staff to show back up to work. I want to go to a model that allows those who are making that choice to do so. And that is it. That's all I want. Nothing more, nothing less. I agree 100% with you. We shouldn't force anybody to do anything. But if they're willing to make that choice, we should do it. Some kids need to be in the classroom, whether it's for 2 months or 18 months. I don't know. I'm not a teacher, so I can't speak intelligently about that. But the ones that have reached out to us have said, we need to be in the classroom with our students. The parents that have reached out said, my student needs to be in the classroom. And if they're still emailing us today, then they feel that even though it's a short period of time, it's still going to be beneficial in the long run. I don't support anything that's mandatory. I don't want to. I don't even like the word hybrid. If you ask me, I like the word choice. What is best for you to educate these kids? What is best for you to learn the material? Is it remotely? Is it in the classroom? That's all I'm saying. Let's just let them choose. Let's don't make them do anything. That's it. That's my only thing. And I note the fact that you have said that I've changed my mind in 4 days. I have received 60 emails in 4 days. They needed to be addressed. These people needed me to come over here and voice their concerns, and I have. And if a parent feels comfortable sending her kid to school, I have got to support that. If a parent tells me, look, Mr. Smith, my kid needs it, and I have a math teacher willing to perform that, I have got to make that marriage work. I've got to put those two together so we can make this. Call it whatever you want, hybrid, remote, with in-person learning, whatever acronym you come up with. The bottom line is it is a choice, and that's all I'm asking us to consider. That's it. I'm not asking us to vote right now. I'm asking us to consider that. Nothing more, nothing less.
But yeah, great, thank you. But in the consideration, we shouldn't have to mandate that if they don't come back, and if they choose not to come back because it's not voted upon the board, that they have to go get medical documentations. I mean, that's putting a lot of pressure on teachers that shouldn't be. We shouldn't even be discussing that at this point in time through our district. I don't think so. I think it's undue stress that they don't need at this time. There's enough stress trying to teach from home, much less having to deal with the stress of the bureaucracy of us pushing our teachers to do something that is really just not right, I don't think, so I thank you for clarifying that. It's a good thing that we can agree to disagree, but I'm still concerned about this whole issue, so we just move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Frank Otero.
Mr. President, members of the board, I went in and agreed to have this for discussion, and because I really am torn on both sides of the issues, but I voted the way I did, and since we're talking about Open Meetings Act, I'm getting texts and emails from people right now during the meeting telling me yay or nay, or telling me that whatever they are, I'm not looking at my phone anymore. I turned it off. I want everyone to realize that if this is a closed meeting between the Los Lunas Board of Education, and since we're in a Zoom mode, we're at home and we've got cell phones and all these other contraptions around, and it makes it real handy for people to get a hold of board members during a meeting. And in my opinion, for somebody to send me messages during a meeting is a threat. And so those of you out there, be responsible parents, and let's all engage in some constructive discussion. Now, second of all, yesterday I turned on the TV and I watched the news at lunch, and this morning again, and what all the channels say? That the Los Lunas School Board is going to vote on hybrid learning. Point blank, that we're voting on it, that we're going to approve it. And I don't know who sends out the things to the press, but it could have been worded in some other way that we're gonna discuss it again, and it was opened up. There's some concerns. I found out about things on Thursday. I finally put two and two together over the weekend, what we're doing for, and so, and I'm willing to do it. I agree with Mr. Smith. We've got to talk all the time about it, but here again, I'm not. We all need to respect each other, and and people need to respect sometimes our decisions. And so, I have a concern, and the third concern I have is a board member speaking on television, and that's the first time I've ever seen a board member speaking on television. And then when in turn that does, it stirs up people against me and my family. And if we want to approve something or discuss something as a board, wait till the board meeting and we'll all discuss it. But that is totally uncalled for. So that's where I'm at with this right now. Dang, we need to get these kids back. But the way some people are going about it, it's not making it easy. Thank you.
Frank, I'm getting the same ones, and I can feel for what you're saying. I guess there's already people that are on a campaign to run. That's fine. I mean, we're just here to service the community, and it's rough. And of course, we take a job that's going to be rough. And I've always said when it involves your kids, that they say it's harder politics than it is for county commissioner or any other one. But the school board is a tough one. But we took this job knowing it's going to be tough. But I agree with you, Frank, that the threats need to really stop. I mean, I don't answer back to them just like you don't. But we're faced with a decision that should be for the best of not only our students, not only our staff, but the community as a whole. And that's tough. And we get some good ones and we get some bad ones, But the bad ones are very, very discouraging. And we got a really bad one, but then he turned around and he apologized it. So I appreciate that. But I agree with you, Frank. It's tough, but what can we say? Maybe it's because we're both Oteros. I don't know.
That it is hard, and I too are my thing is dinging. I haven't opened up any either, and I agree with Mr. Otero in the spirit of the board discussing as a board, because we all have our opinions, it is best for us not to do that during the meeting. So I agree with you 100%. If we didn't have these kind of discussions, this would not be an important issue, but it is an important issue. And that's why we're passionate about the way we're discussing this. There's no doubt in my mind that this board wants to bring the students back as safely as they can and as the most beneficial that they can. I have no doubt that that is the consensus of this board. The only thing I'm asking is that in the discussion item here, that we consider, I guess, extending our boundaries, expanding our comfort zone with people that are willing to take that step to come forward. And we may get one class, I don't know, we may get 20 classes. It's hard to say. And I don't like the nomenclature hybrid. I don't. I mean, I think it puts a lot of stipulations on, it makes it seem like we're going hybrid, all the teachers come back, all the students come back, and this is the way we're going to do it. And that's not what I support at all. I support the choice. So I'm glad that there's a lot of passion. I appreciate all the input that we're getting from the community, and you're right. Some of it's good, some of it's bad. It's from all over the spectrum of what it is we should do. But in my opinion, again, what I am preaching, if you will, is that we can accommodate all of them. That's it. Can't, and that's not making anything mandatory, but I still feel that we can accommodate all of them. So we're still on item number 8, if there's any discussion of this.
One more comment. You know, how does it look to our community and our teachers that we're asking them to come back or volunteer to come back? And here we are the leaders of the school district as a board, and we're still meeting virtually. If this thing changes to whatever it changes to, we need to lead by example and see about get together. I'm not changing. I wish that we would have honored the vote that was taken on February 2nd. And I'm still not there until our teachers get vaccinated. And we got to take everybody's livelihood into consideration. Livelihood meaning, here again, everybody's life has changed for the year, and all of a sudden we want them to change in another 2 weeks. How is that fair? It's not fair. So anyways, hopefully I'm done.
Any more discussion on item number 8, board members? So Ms. Stalen, do you see any problem with us going to item number 9?
No, sir, I do not.
Thank you, Ms. Stalen. If there's no further discussion on item number 8, that will bring us to item number 9, approval of the district learning plan as presented. Again, since I requested this to be on the agenda, I'm going to try to state this in a way that I can understand it as well, because I've said a lot of things here. In short, I want to do exactly what we are doing right now, with the exception of allowing choice, and that is it. No mandating, no waivers, no go get a doctor's slip, no anything. Exactly what we're doing now, and incorporate choice. That is it. So I'm going to make a motion that we approve the reentry plan as presented, with the timelines based on teachers who choose to return, instructing students who choose to return, and maintain our remote efforts with staff and students in that environment who choose to continue there, and support all of our staff and all of our students 100%. That will be my motion. I will stand for a second.
I will second that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Vickers. I have a second by Mr. Vickers. Mr. Eloy Hidon, how do you vote?
No.
Mr. Stephen Otero, how do you vote?
No.
Mr. Frank Otero, how do you vote?
No.
Mr. Vickers, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Motion fails, 3 votes to 2. That will bring us to item number 10, announcement of meetings. As allowed by the Open Meeting Act and District Open Meetings Resolution, on occasion, a quorum of board members attend the same function, including those held at school sites, at the district level, as well as sports functions, conferences, workshops, and trainings. Board members will refrain from discussing and/or acting on board issues in those settings. In addition, only official meetings are published, and if other meetings are scheduled, they will be announced in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. I'd like to announce the following meetings. On February 23rd, there will be a regular board meeting in the boardroom at 6 p.m. The meeting locations are dependent on mandates from the governor, and if need be, they will be held via Zoom. Brings us to item number 11, adjournment. I will stand for a motion to adjourn.
Mr. President, before we move forward, I know that I just want to make sure that we have some clarification on it. And Karen, I just want to make sure that this is reflected well in the minutes. Karen?
I'm sorry, I was typing. Mr. President, members of the board, Superintendent Romero, Mr. Smith, I'm going to ask you to redo that motion for me one more time so that there is no confusion for the next set of minutes, please.
Perfect. I will reread the motion and I can actually send it to you word for word.
That would be fine. My question is this. So since they're not changing the learning plan, they're continuing. So basically you made some changes with the instruction. So the learning plan that was currently done from last time, that they stay in remote with the exception of CEL, does that then stand until the meeting of March 23rd?
Well, so it's tabled. So we have another meeting coming up and I can always make a motion to untable it then as well. But what the board agreed on the February 2nd meeting is our posture right now, if you will. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. I'm just making it very clear because I don't want there to be any confusion when I type this out.
So I believe that will be our posture until this is discussed at a future meeting.
Got it. Thank you.
So did you need my motion again?
I will have you email it just to make sure that I'm accurate, but I think that I'm fine. Thank you.
I will go ahead and read it so that way we can make sure that this is accurate. My motion was to approve the reentry plan as presented with the timelines based on teachers who choose to return, instructing students who choose to return, and maintain our remote efforts with staff and students in that environment who choose to continue working remotely. Board members, is there any comments on what my motion actually was? So if there's no comments on my motion, that's what it was.
Mr. President,
Mr. Hidon.
there was decisions made on February 2nd. I think the council needs to make sure that everything's been clarified and we know exactly what posture we're in right now.
So the posture that we voted on February 2nd was to remain in remote learning. That's it. That's all there was. So the definition of remote learning is obviously different to whoever wishes to interpret that.
Yes, there was also some requests from Dr. Romero in that.
Mr. Smith, I think what he's referring to is that you made the exception of CEL. So it would be remain in remote learning with the exception of CEL classes being allowed to attend.
Correct, which is what we did on February 2nd. So
correct.
CEL would have been in there.
So
because that's the last.
My intent at the time, and members of the board, was to be able to continue with the CL classrooms that we had in place at the time. We had 4, then to further be able to expand those opportunities for SPED students across the district.
So are those, can you tell me, are those teachers required to come back without the vaccine, or can they stay remote?
So we do have classes that we've been able to talk with teachers. They're ready to come back. We've had a number of them already be able to come in, have their classrooms ready. I think you're referring to a teacher that is wanting to stay in remote. If that's the case, then those students won't be able to come to class. They're also going to have to stay in remote.
So just to be clear, those teachers will not have to go through Brian Baca's office.
That is correct.
Thank you.
But to be clear, if those teachers do not come in for in-person learning, that also means that for program-wise, those students won't be able to come for in-person learning.
I believe, Dr. Romero, is something that you got to handle internally. You know the need. I just don't think that we need to force our teachers to go and get a doctor's note to come back to work. We can't treat special ed or special needs teachers any different than we teach anybody else. So I think we're getting ourselves deeper and deeper into a discussion that we shouldn't be into right now. The way it was on, you're wanting to change it now, but the way it was on, and we keep going back to February the 2nd, was CEL. So that's the way it happened, and that's the way it's been going on. And now we're trying to add more stuff to it. And I think we're getting ourselves in a deeper mess on this that's not part of the posting of the agenda. So I don't know. At this point, I would say let's leave it alone. And if they want to call another special meeting to address this other issue you have, then let's call another special meeting to address this specific issue you have right now. That's my suggestion.
So we've, through items, I believe it's 7, 8, 9, 10, I don't remember which ones they were. We've already had these discussions. So whatever we were on February 2nd is what we are right now. Now, CEL was a caveat that we did have in there. And Dr. Romero, I know that you are in tune with what we're doing as far as that particular aspect of our plan goes. So if you think that there are additions that need to be made, keeping in spirit with the board's decision on February 2nd, then I meant that's probably what you're going to do. So.
Yes, sir, Mr. President.
Is that fair?
Yes.
There being no more comment, I will move to item number 11, adjournment. It will stand for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
The motion by Mr. Stephen Otero to adjourn. I'll stand for a second.
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Frank Otero. Mr. Hidon, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Frank Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Hidon, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Meeting is adjourned at 6:50.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay.